out, only many went in. So not a single place to stay with. There it is. And I should show you a regional map of West Africa, one of our own devices, just to show you. Here's little Togo. Wow. Just a sliver of a place, really. And you can drive across Lomé. I don't know if you can see it, is the capital. 20 minutes to get across from Ghana here to Dahomey, or what's it called now? Benin. Very small country, but quite long, and like a the kind of plug that geologists work with. They drill and they pull out a plug and they can see years and years and different things all in the stack. Togo's like that. If you go from the south, capital way up here, you've gone through a great deal of African cuisine, languages, culture. It's very nice. But our route, as I talk about in the book, left Lomé, went to Cotonou, and to Lagos of Nigeria, very big country, up through Nigeria, and then here into the Sahel region, very desert. And then over here into Burkina Faso, stopping at the Dogon country. The Dogon being a particularly, what would you say, retrograde people. Weren't really, I mean, the French made contact with them in the late 20th century. Very, very late for most African countries. And they still don't like visitors. So it's the only place in Africa where I didn't actually feel welcome, both of us, They do wonderful things, they're marvelous people, but they're just not in with the tourism thing. The government obliges them to take people into the villages and build hotels for them, but they don't really like it at all. Ouagadougou, all around like this, and then back to Lomé. And up here, this is the Niger River, which has the peculiarity of flowing north, and then makes this big bend at Timbuktu and comes down all the way to here, to Fort Harcourt in Nigeria. Major place and river. And around here, we travel by dugout. In very interesting ways to travel, but quite common for the people there. So the last map is Togo. Michael, can you see that? There you are. It's hard to really, here's the capital, and this is the Muslim north. And here is a village here where you'll hear something about my stay there, because I spent a lot of time in villages. Benin on this side and Ghana on this side. Very good. So let me begin by thanking Amy of the library and Kate and the whole library staff. They've been wonderful in getting this organized. And the man behind the curtain, Michael Reed, who does technical things and gives me loving support. That's important too. So let me just say a few things about Togo. I remember being strongly affected by traveling and then coming back to New York and having the strangest feeling of being happier to be human, thinking better of the human race, glad to be a part of it. And I thought, what is that? I mean, I had never thought that I was unhappy to be human. It didn't occur to me, really. But there was something about being in Togo that seemed to bring the best in what you might call humanity, human nature. And I traveled back to New York with it. It was really quite a shock to see New Yorkers. They were all kind of hard-eyed and looking at watches and hurtling along the streets. And many of them were, addicts, and they didn't great blank looks. They didn't care where they were. It was disappointing. And I realized that I'd been looking at people who, in Togo and all through West Africa and the north as well, who walk beautifully. You know, they often have things on their heads, so they have to keep their balance. They walk in this marvelous, free, lovely way. They stop to greet you at every opportunity, and each other, of course. And well, there are many things that made them seem more human, which is, again, a little bit odd to me. I had to sort that out. I thought they can't be better humans, and they're not really even happier humans. They act happy, but you know, we all have problems, and they have problems too. But by comparison with the New Yorkers, especially the loneliness of New Yorkers, you know, so many people in New York live in a small apartment and don't know anybody on their floor. It's famous, but I think actually the whole Western world, there are a lot of lonely people. In Togo, you're never lonely, never lonely. I mean, sometimes you wish you were lonely. And it's constantly with somebody. But I would see on a rainy day, children picking a big banana leaf from the nearest banana tree, and they'd get under it, and there'd always be 3, 4, 5 children under this banana tree. There was never banana leaf. There was never any question about, you know, each one gets a banana leaf. No, and umbrellas the same way. Adults are always 2, 3 under an umbrella. Getting together is very, very important. And also greetings. They always greet you. And greetings can be quite complicated. Call and response, back and forth, and usually involve not just how are you, but how you're your wife or wives, your chickens, your goats, your household, they ask, and it's a ritualized call and response, and you have to stop to engage, and you have to answer. So it creates immediately a bond. It's not just people of the same village or ethnicity that do this. They do this with everybody. It's very, very nice custom. And I eventually thought it must be that what makes it human is that the phrase humanity rules came back to me again and again. It seemed like really people were in charge. For example, when you get on a bus, if it's a bus, it could just as well be a dugout or a truck. If it's scheduled, it'll say, you know, 7:30 in the morning, we're off. So you used to get there quite early because we hadn't understood yet. And then at 9 o'clock, we might say, excuse me, to the driver, excuse me, do you think you'll be leaving soon? Oh, no, I can't leave till the bus is full. You know, at first you think, well, that's outrageous. And you might become impatient, but really, it's not a bad idea. How is the bus going to make any money if it's half full? And it's jollier when it's full anyway. So humanity rules. And I had to I made up a brief list for your consideration, really, of what is it that makes West Africa human. And well, let's see what you think. First of all, I thought communal living. Everybody lives together. It's a village, it's a family, whatever, they're living in a group. They're always part of a group. They have a partnership with nature. They're not thinking of building a road that will dominate the landscape and take them where they want in record time. No, they're working with nature. They have solidarity with nature, with animals, with plants. Agriculture is part of their lives, and it's enshrined in their religion. All this is ritualized and very important to them. And then they value stability and continuity in their cultural life, much more than I think we do. Change is slowed as far as they're able. I think they're not really able nowadays, but traditionally, slow the change down. We know we're not going to be able to deal with big changes in a short time. So they try to do that, and in some ways, I'll try to explain it works. It leads to a blurring of past and present. It's curious, sometimes you think, I went to a royal tomb once, and it was an enormous tumulus There's a movie in Bar Harbor about this. What's it called? Woman King? About the kingdom of Lomé in Dahomey. The king's grave is very vast, huge tumulus thatched, and there's a small doorway. And we met the women who were taking care of this tomb, and they were introduced to us as the king's wives. And I said, excuse me, but they can't really be his wives. He was 1870 or something. Well, no, but they're descended from his wives. So this is his first wife, and this is his cousin wife, and so on. They kept their status, and they kept it through hundreds of years. And I was with a brash older Dutchman who insisted on presenting a wish to the king. He said, "Can I go inside?" I looked at this, I can't go inside a tomb. He said, but the wives thought that was a great idea. Oh, yes, yes, yes. So I watched my elderly Dutch friend on his hands and knees next to the cousin wife, and they kind of waddled into the tomb through the little doorway. And the wife was there shouting into the tomb. I thought she might say, you know, "Oh, great king, please allow me to bring this strange person inside your tomb." Lots of reverence, maybe a whispering ritual. So no, she was on her hands and knees shouting into the tomb. Da, 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 da. I couldn't hear it. I couldn't understand it, but it was plain that it was as if the king was slightly deaf. You know, special. And all that gave me this impression that he wasn't really dead. I'm sure that was what they think, you know, that his spirit or something is still there. So you have to deal with him as he was in life. And past and present get kind of run together. It's actually quite a lovely feeling. Also, they value their ancestors very much. So there's a kind of circularity in their lives. I had a friend who said he's always tries to be polite because he had a very, very fierce grandfather whose name translated to the river cannot overcome the sea. I guess he was the sea. He was a chief among his people. And quite a fierce man. This young friend of mine was scared of him. And so when he met somebody he didn't know, he was extremely polite. And he explained that that's because I don't know whether this person might not be my grandfather. So I have to behave as well as I possibly can. So he lives in a world where his ancestors are actually present, part of that blurring thing. Also, perhaps we should mention an attachment to place. They're very attached to, maybe that's part of being human, being very, very attached to the place you live in, your people, your village. There was a song being played on the radio called Akada, and that referred to academic, is their word for academic, people who had left the village to go to school, and they were Akada. And really, the song was about how lost they were. What was the use of getting an education if it took you, uprooted you from your village, from your family, from your people, the Akada. So they're very attached to that. And then somehow to me, they live with real things. I mean, everything is real, but and for us, they don't have computers. Well, they didn't. They have them now. Remember, this was 1969 and 1971, so a lot of changes occurred. But they live with real things, not virtual things. It's like the difference between fire. When I sit in front of a fire, I'm enthralled. I feel the heat. I have to move out of it if it's too hot. I can look at its various stages of brilliance and eventual extinguishment. And I feel happy to do that. Heat, as we know, it comes out of a wall, you know, or out of a radiator. That's not really fire. That's not the real thing. It's just a byproduct. And somehow they have a connection with real things that I think makes them human too, would make us human as well. So if I may just begin with a few readings about villages. So The first one I chose is about the architecture of villages. And you'll see that the human element is very important too. So I'm hurtling on the back of a truck, a US embassy truck driven by a friend of mine, through the countryside, and it's gorgeous. You know, everything's in bloom. The road is never, well, it might lie straight, but if there's a river, it just goes down to the river. There's no grading or bridges or anything to there. No, like this. And every time it goes up or down, you feel a different temperature. It's a very present experience. But the only human geometry in this rolling countryside is the straight line of the road, the rectangles of occasional concrete buildings, or the conical thatch roofs of the villages, clustered among fields and groves at the end of paths leading from the roadside. I had only a glimpse of these villages. So screened are they behind their trees, their dun natural color, so like the prairie grasses surrounding me. Sometimes a waft of wood smoke scented air alerts me to them. I try to picture what kind of life goes on under those conical roofs or around those big trees at the very center of the village, where goats and dogs are asleep, children play in the dust, and old men converse. A Westerner might call these villages huddled in the landscape close to nature. We like our modern houses to be low to the ground, oriented on natural scenery, and lapped in shrubs and flowers. But these Togolese villages, well, they're certainly inextricably bound to the natural world by agriculture and religion, but they rigorously exclude the landscape. Within the village precinct, very few green things are suffered to grow, perhaps only that great tree at the center. The village environment is totally man-made of adobe bricks and plaster, earth moistened and shaped by hand into walls which rise from the same earth underneath. Everything is the same color and the same material. And all beaten hard by passing feet. The walls and grounds flow into each other as rain and wear join them in gentle curves. Rather than facing the fields and the hills around it, the village turns inward on itself. The outer houses turn their backs on the field, and family compounds focus on a courtyard. Doors and unglazed windows are small to keep out the elements, and many offer only a chance glimpse of a view. There must be a partly defensive purpose to this plan, to keep out wildlife and outsiders. But when I've stood in the middle of one of these villages, surrounded by the sights and sounds of human life contained within monochrome adobe surfaces flowing organically into each other, curving horizontally and vertically and completely encompassing me, I wonder whether there isn't another purpose to this architecture, to embolden humanity. It seems to be a declaration of the people's powerful creative distinctiveness from nature, and its exclusive inward focus reminds them of their best ultimate resource, each other. It's a totally enclosed, very beautiful kind of architecture. I spent a lot of time in a village called Ghanaian, which is here, a third away of the country. Unremarkable in every way, except that the man I was traveling with, his brother, who was from San Francisco, and his girlfriend, who's Mexican, had been married there. It's a long story, but there was a 3-day village marriage, and it marked them very strongly too. And I arrived with the groom and the bride's parents, so we were immediately given a lot of attention, even us. And one of the attentions that I benefited from was being bathed by women. So the women took us in charge, leading us one after the other to a small palm frond enclosure at one side of the compound. Once I was inside, The two women, grinning now, tweaked my clothes and urged me to strip. As I stood there in my pale nakedness, they motioned me to step up to a large flat stone at the center of the small enclosure, where Patience, one of the women, immediately threw a bucket of heated water over me. She and Victorine went to work with plenty of soap and some sponges made of coconut husks, turning me this way and that, adding water and soap, laughing and exclaiming as they scrubbed with a will above, below, between. No part of me was exempted or escaped comment. And although deaf to their Aposo language, I could detect only good-humored amusement in their voices. Lavez la tête, wash your head, said Pascal, as she passed another bucket, she dumped another bucket over me before working my hair into a lather. A thorough rinse, a meticulous toweling, and a clean pressed cloth to wind around my waist, and I was led back across the compound feeling refreshed and even transformed. My otherness had been scrubbed away, my intimacies revealed and accepted, my membership in this new family confirmed. There remained only for Victorine to take me indoors, where she dusted me liberally with talcum powder before allowing me, still happily dazed and trailing a cloud of scented powder, to rejoin Eric in our rooms. So that was my introduction to village life. I'd love to answer questions if any of them have occurred to you. I can go on reading, but I don't want to ride roughshod over what you want to say. Okay, I'm going to ride roughshod. We used to, before leaving the capital, Eric and I used to fill the car with magazines and CDs, and we had a Walkman in those days, books, everything, we're going to be in the bush for 2 weeks at a time, no electricity, we need to take the batteries, everything, we'd have to do this properly and keep ourselves not from being bored. But, we were never bored, never bored. We never touched sometimes we would listen to a CD, but otherwise, we just forgot we had all these distractions with us because there was something about the slow pace of the development of the day and then the evening and the meal, all that seemed to be sufficient. Not that it was unusual or exciting, it just seemed sufficient and we never needed distractions. There is a deep, pervasive sense of peace in the compound at twilight. It's no wonder we rarely read the books we bought to make the time pass. We don't seem to experience time as something separate from the activities that swirl and flow around the courtyard all day long. No one has a watch or asks, what time is it? Nothing seems to be done compulsively against the clock or with an idea of efficiency, but rather in its own time, deliberately, without hurry. Time seems generated out of whatever is happening at the moment, the alternating rhythm of the fufu mortars. Put yams in a mortar and beat them into a mash, that's the base. But the women stand around the mortar and pound it, and it's a very rhythmical thing, but it seems as if that generates time, as well as, well, just the twilight getting darker and darker. Time is present time, and shorn of past and future, chronology and compulsion is no longer something substantial enough to be hurried or slowed, killed, or even passed. The children do their homework in the lantern light. We sit around talking quietly or receive a visitor. The night is soft, the sky powdery with stars. Eventually, everyone says, bonsoir, bonsoir, goes to their respective doorway and to bed. The next morning, we go greeting. Now, greeting is often just a formal, hi, how are you? I'm in town, and people return your greeting too, so it can take a lot of time. And it involves drinking tiny glasses of very powerful liquors called soda. Actually, everybody's got a different name for it. But if you've been reading for a morning, you go back and have a long afternoon nap in the middle of the day. So there are no doors. I mean, when somebody is out of their house, they shut a door. But when they're home, maybe there's a door curtain, but there's no door. You can't knock to say that you're here and you want to see them. Instead, you clap your hands and you go, I go, oui, hello, oui, boy. Hable. That's a chance for me to introduce Molly Paley to you. She was in Togo as a Peace Corps person for 2.5 years, 83 to 85, in a village right here, right here in the middle, a big crossroads. And she has many stories to tell if you can waylay her. All right, so greeting is very important. The village has a beautiful sense of time. You might even say that time had a human face. Schedules were provisional. Events began only when the people had gathered. Regardless of the pace of activities, encounters between people created a pause. Greetings had to be exchanged, questions asked and answered, and this obligatory ritual carved out a distinct moment, bringing the flow of time to a stop. When it resumed, it followed the pace of the people's successive activities, and they moved from task to task without the artificial stress of chronology and without haste. Nobody ever hurries in Togo. That's very interesting to experience. What can I, yes, Mark.
Philip, can you give us a little background of the circumstances of your trip? When was it? Why was it?
Yeah, it was for the first time was 1969 for 7 months, and then again in 1971. And I just liked it very much the first time, so I thought I'd go back. I went back to, particularly to meet my friend Eric, who was working for the Quakers in Togo, at a spectacular event called Soul to Soul, a rock music festival in Accra, in Ghana, right over here. And I landed fresh from New York. I had some idea what I was getting into, but to spend all afternoon and all night in a vast public square in Accra that filled with musicians until, well, there was Wilson Picket, the Boys Choir of Harlem, Roberta Flack, Wilson Picket. Yeah, that was Santana. Oh my gosh. Were you there too?
No, but I read it in your book.
Great American stars mixed in with great Ghanaian stars, village drum choruses and women in choruses. It was great. And it went on all night. I was up until at least 4 o'clock in the morning and then staggered off to try and get to the next stage. It was a wonderful introduction. But that's really why I went, Mark. I was teaching in Harlem at a school where I realized that after I'd gone to West Africa, there were a lot of similarities. There was a kind of incandescence of life in the schoolyard that I hadn't seen, like my schoolyard. And it was a real, and everybody was late all the time. You know, it was a lot of, and I thought, oh, people change, but not that much. So I was happy to go back and try to put those two things together. Any other questions from anybody? Yes.
Have you been working on the book for a long time? How do you remember? This is a long time.
Well, you know, I think, Stephanie, I think that I never forgot. And I often told
stories about what I'd been through and that renewed them. And I had notes that I'd taken. I was a little notebook here. So that helped. But basically, I think I just never forgot. It was a very deep experience. And when I sat down to write the book, having organized it, it wrote itself. Really didn't have any trouble at all putting it all together. It was a very nice way to write a book. So in Togo, when I was in a village once where a very tall Muslim, a long robe, kufiyat, was introduced to me as a soothsayer, a very great soothsayer from Nigeria. So I said, would you, do my fortune, please? He said, well, yeah, but you have to come back in 3 days because what I do through 3 or 4 spirits who travel with me, and I need them to make it happen. And I came in a bus, and they only walk. So I said, okay, 3 days later, I was there in the dark room, and his wife and baby and a couple other people that were fortunes told were there. And it was a very nice experience. He had a little trouble with me. He had a pile of shells and he said, put your hands in there and move them around. And then he put his hand in there and moved them around. And he kept going, oh, I can't see what's happening here. Oh dear, Anasara, Anasara, Anasara. And I know that's the word for white man in the north. So he was having trouble reading the shells that I had been processing. But eventually he gave me a little charm, lots of the story, but it ended up with a little folded leather charm full of Arabic writing. And I had it at a string so I could wear it around my neck. But he said, no, what you do with this is you take it into the town and you go on the bridge and you throw it into the river at twilight. And his previous suggestion for making my fortunes turn out all right was to go to the market and buy 3 white goats and 3 meters of white cloth and 2 white chickens and everything, lots of shells, and to give that all away to the first person I met, but not to somebody who asked. So I thought, it's not very practical. I can't go to the market and buy all that stuff. She said, okay, charm. So that's why I went to the bridge at twilight and I could see the water, a great tumult of water dark down there. And I leaned over and I threw in the charm. And then I stood up and this guy who was coming by me, because the streets are full of people, almost knocked into me. He said, oh, I'm sorry. And when he looked at me, his face was kind of horrified. And I thought, oh, what's the matter? He said, oh, I didn't mean to bump into you, but I know what the matter was. The matter was that I could only, in his experience, have been there to throw a charm in the water. And I wasn't the kind of person who was supposed to be doing magic. Anasara doing grigri. That's a little much. But you can become part of it if you want. That was a very nice experience. Yes, Diana?
I have a question. The difference culturally between the North and the South.
Very, very, very sharp. Largely because, the way Africa was settled by Africans is lateral. People came from North Africa and moved this way across West Africa. Lots of migrations, all in west to east or east to west. When the colonists came along, they reorganized everything along commercial avenues like rivers, this, and everything became long. And so the inland, the northern part of many countries is Muslim. And that makes it very different from the South, which is more African. And that creates problems. There are a lot of problems with national unity because the colonies broke them up. The Ewe language is spoken in Ghana, and then all the way in this part of Togo. So, you know, the fact that there's a border here with border guards and border controls and taxing and all that makes people very confused. As far as they're concerned, it's my country.
Somebody else want to ask a question? Yes, yes.
So, the last moment I spoke to you, touched on some of what I was thinking about, but I want to know, when you mentioned at one point early on, and then the Muslims in the north, and I thought, oh, it's like Nigeria and the elephant in the north. And I wondered, when did Muslim people come to northern Togo, and what is the interplay of religions and spiritual cultures? There was some sort of spiritual religion in these early ancient cultures, and what other Western religions have come in and out here?
Well, the Muslim incursions from North Africa are very early, so 800 BC probably, just as a guess. And they moved all across Africa and play a very prominent role now. And they're thoroughly Africanized. And the Africans have Africanized the Muslim faith too, so interplay between the two. The Africans always have their own, that's where the Dogon come in. They have their own shamanistic, if you want, animist system of worship. And that's absolutely basic to them. They may be Muslims, but many of my friends who are Muslim and had a soccer game to play would spend a lot of their money going to what they call a fetish worker who would charm them for their soccer game. It didn't matter that they were Muslim and that their imam would certainly have disapproved. So it coexists. And then we have the Christians, who have also been there since a long time. The Portuguese were the first in the 15th century. I mean, the Catholics, but most of all the evangelical Protestants, and they made a lot of headway in places like Uganda, not altogether to Africa's betterment, I don't think. Nana, what religion are you, if I may ask? Christian. So many Africans, many West Africans have adopted Christianity, but I hope I don't offend you by saying that there again, you can always have recourse to your, if you lose something, for example, there are local, I don't know what to call it, in French they're called féticheurs, you know, fetish people, who specialize in finding things. So, you know, you're not going to get a specialist in your local Protestant church. You have to go to this guy, and somebody stole my camera once, and my host was horrified and took me to a specialist in finding lost objects. And first he told me, come back tomorrow, no sex, and only eat beans. So, only skin and pieces. But then when I came back, he had a lot of trouble. He wanted to know exactly what it was that was missing. How could he find it? He had a lot of trouble. So he bought up the major measures, so to speak. He clapped and called, and a young woman, a virgin, my host explained a virgin, came out and knelt on the floor, and we placed a big, very long, large, old sort of muzzle-loading firearm on her head. And on a little pad. And she knelt there, and we all waited, and the gun went looking, you know. I said, you know, I was hoping it was going to land on me, but no, it was looking for what direction anyway the stolen object was. But even that didn't work. But that's to say that those are, you know, that's what people have recourse to when they have a problem. Not so much, and also to their priest or their imam or whatever. They still cling to the old ways. Yes.
Do you have any intention of returning, visiting these places?
I would have to say no. I did go back maybe 4 years after the 1971 experience. And they had an attempt on the president's life in Togo, excuse me. And lots of people were suspicious of each other. He had used it to reinforce his political position, and it was just shockingly unlike what I remembered. Also, you know, I have to admit it, I was in love. My mother wrote me a letter, don't romanticize West Africa. And my younger brother, who's a sociologist, don't make too much of traditional society. So, these words were lost on me because I'm here. I love this country. Everybody seems to love me, and I love everybody. So I'm not going to be skeptical or about this. So when I went back and things were not the same, I felt as a lover does, spurned. You know, things have changed. You can't do much about it, but people are not the same. Yes.
Many people that I know, there's mostly peaceful people who spent time in Africa, say that it gets in your blood. There's no place like it, and you never forget it. And it's just it's hard to explain. They can't even explain it to you. But it's a very deep love of place. And I went to a talk last night with a book written by Penobscot Indian man, and he was saying how important place is to his culture, that despite all the trauma intergenerationally that he experienced, when he got to the river, that's where he belonged. That's where he felt it. And so I think the certain kinds of indigenous cultures that you know, place just becomes so important. And if you have a chance to even just get a tiny experience, it's transformative.
Molly, you want to comment on that? Because
yeah, well, it's really interesting you bring that up, because when I met Philip, because I saw the book in Northeast Harbor in a window shop, I thought,
what is that?
And I was surprised because I see the cowrie shells, the indigo fabric, and the word Togo, you know. But the first thing, I reached out to Philip because I wanted my book signed, because reading it, he had the exact same experiences I had, and I lived there for 2.5 years. And his experience was briefer, but everything, I dug out my journals and was just fascinated that your experiences were parallel to mine. And my life, I always looked at it as simply, and today I still view it that way, before Togo, after Togo, avant, after, you know, just because my life changed over there. You know, I mean, that's the beauty of traveling, but being able to live in a place, experience the culture, the food, the work.
Yeah, and work with them and all that. And Jane, I think it's also true that Togo is a traditional culture. It's a feature of all traditional cultures to attach importance to place, to value family. You know, we're the ones, excuse me, we're the weird ones. I don't know if anybody's run across this book, Weird. Weird, Western, educated, industrialized. Was it? Industrialized. Industrialized, rich, and what's the D? Decadent, democratic. And in his book, he points out that 9/10 of the world is not weird, not like us, that we're the weird ones. And much of those people who are not weird are like the Togolese, a traditional place. It's very true.
What's the distance north to south?
It's about, this is 20 minutes. This would be what, 3 days, 4 days of driving? Not that the roads are that good either, but it would be a long, I'm not sure what the
I think
mileage
it's about
is.
300 miles.
300 years.
And several dialects, obviously, all the way up and down,
Several is not the word.
hundreds.
Yeah, and so people want to know, why didn't you learn an African language? Because if I go 20 miles, I have to speak another one.
So what do they use the French for? Just,
Well, you know, Togo was German before World War I. And everybody was obliged to learn German. And there was an old Ewe chief in Lomé, here, who still spoke German. And I was with my Dutch friend's father, who spoke German. And I couldn't believe it. They were standing in the middle of the yam field, jammering away in German. They were delighted to be speaking German. And then Togo was assigned to France as a protectorate in treaties after the war, and held it into the 60s. So French is the national language, so to speak. Because the president is from this part of the country, and that's very different from the coast. They're kind of wild people. They don't have anything to eat for 3-4 months at a time because it's so dry. So they drink instead. We drink a kind of beer made of millet. And one household in each village is assigned the task of making chukutu for a week. And anybody can go to that house and ask for a bowl of chukutu. So you sit inside and they give you a bowl of a gourd of chukutu. You have to get the bees away because they want some too. You hold the bowl and you sip the bowl. And it's a nice low kind of buzz, but it certainly makes you forget you're hungry most of the time. And they make music with stones. It's kind of part of that desert thing. They pick up stones of various thicknesses and material kinds of stone, and they sit in the middle and play wildly, marvelous. Lithophones. So that's a completely different story from the people on the coast who are much more westernized, and there's a good deal of tension. Any mountains? Not. There are mountains here on the border with Ghana. Any mountains, Mom?
Lomé was very hilly, the plateau.
Yeah.
And then Accra, where the president is from in the north, had hills.
Yeah.
But talk a little bit about how you are at the Gulf of Benin and what it's like at the very tip top. The topography, the geography really changes.
Yeah. You went to Dapango, I think, didn't you?
No, I never did.
I mean, way up here I didn't even go there. I'm sorry, I didn't. Peace Corps is up there.
Yeah.
And must be quite an experience. But for me, the Togo and most of the places I traveled to were humid and I don't know, almost erotic with humanity. It was quite different, the tropics. But that's not to forget that there are parts that are dry and kind of austere. The Northerners, for example, are much less Europeanized. So in the South, if you go to somebody's house or you happen on a ceremony or something, a dance, they hurry to bring you a chair and you have to sit in the chair. And at first I would say, no, thank you. I don't want to sit in the chair. I want to be like everybody else. No, that's very rude. So I learned to sit in a chair and be an honored guest. But in the North, I noticed they didn't do that. They were not eager to make life easier for you. They just said, here, join me on this log and we'll see what happens. Very different. Nice. Somebody else said something? Well, I think I should stop. Unless the two young ladies have about African children, about Togolese children, about where to get a banana leaf. Well, you can always ask me. I'm right next door.
things to drink and cookies to be eaten and talks to talk. So help yourself.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it was Well, welcome.
Your friends already?